There are 5 perennials in your garden right now that are quietly asking to be divided, and the window to do it is closing fast. Miss it, and you do not get another chance until this time next year. And in the meantime, those plants keep declining, flowering less, and dying out in the middle. That is the specific cost, and it is worth being clear about. Dividing is not a job you can do whenever you get around to it. These particular plants need to be lifted and split in late summer, because they need enough warm weeks left in the season to grow new roots and settle in before the ground freezes. Once the soil turns cold, a freshly divided plant has no time to establish, and it goes into winter weak or does not survive at all. So the deadline is real. It is set by the first frost. And for a lot of gardens, that clock is running down right now. Here is the good news, and it is the reason this job is worth doing rather than dreading. Dividing does 2 things at once, and both are gifts. It rescues a tired, overcrowded, poorly flowering plant and makes it vigorous again. And every piece you split off is a brand new plant, for free, to fill another bed or to give away. 1 clump becomes 3 or 4. You are not just maintaining these plants, you are multiplying them at no cost in an afternoon. So this video is the 5 perennials to divide now, before the window shuts, and exactly how to know each one is ready and what it needs. And I'm going to be honest about the timing, because August means different things in different gardens, and the real deadline is not a date on the calendar, it is a number of weeks before your frost. I will show you how to work out your own window, so you do not divide too late, or in the wrong conditions. There is also one of these 5 that comes with a famous trap, a mistake that gives you healthy leaves and no flowers for years, and that people blame on the plant's age when it was really the way it was divided. I will make sure you do not fall into it. And at the end, the honest other side, the plants you must not divide right now, because doing it to the wrong perennial in late summer trades a thriving plant for a struggling one. But first, why late summer at all? Why is now the moment for this, and not spring? The reason is what makes the whole thing work. Late summer works for dividing these plants. For the same reason, autumn is the best time to plant almost anything. The soil is still warm while the air is cooling. That combination is what makes now the moment. A freshly divided plant has one urgent job, which is to grow new roots and anchor itself before winter. Division is hard on a plant, because you are tearing its root system apart, so every division goes into the ground, needing to rebuild roots quickly. Warm soil is what lets it do that. The ground still holds its summer heat, so the roots stay active and grow fast, while the cooling air tells the plant to stop pushing leaves and flowers on top. So all the plant's energy pours into rooting, which is exactly what a fresh division needs, with no vulnerable new top growth to support at the same time. Spring seems like it should be just as good, and for some plants it is, but for these 5 late summer is better, because they have mostly finished flowering for the year. Dividing a plant in spring, just as it is trying to bloom, disturbs it at the worst possible moment and often costs you that year's flower. Dividing it now, after the show is over, lets it recover quietly through autumn and come up next spring ready to perform. Now the honest part about timing, because it is the whole deadline, the plant needs roughly 6 to 8 weeks of warm growing weather after division to establish before hard frost. So the real cutoff is not a date on the calendar, it is your first frost, counted backward. Find your average first frost date, count back about 8 weeks, and that is your window. In a cold northern garden, that window is closing now, in late summer. In a mild southern one, you have longer, and in a genuine heat wave, you should wait for it to break regardless, because a division baking in 90-degree heat will struggle no matter how good your timing looks on paper. Now, the first plant, and it is the one everyone thinks of first, the bearded iris. Number 1. Bearded iris. This is the classic late summer division job, the plant most people think of first, and it genuinely needs doing now more than any other on the list. Bearded iris grows from thick, fleshy underground stems called rhizomes, which sit right at the soil surface and creep outward year by year. Over 3 or 4 years, those rhizomes multiply into a congested, overlapping mass. And when they get that crowded, 2 things happen. the flowering drops off sharply because the plant is competing with itself, and the old rhizomes in the center die out, leaving a bare, woody middle ringed by growth. A clump of iris that has become mostly leaves with few flowers, or has a dead patch in the center, is asking to be divided. Late summer is the ideal moment for a specific reason. After flowering, the rhizomes go into a quiet, semi-dormant phase, so lifting them now causes the least disturbance. And there is a bonus to doing it now. This is when you can easily spot iris borer damage, the telltale holes and soft, rotten sections, so you can cut out and destroy the affected pieces while you have the plant up. The method is simple. Lift the whole clump, and you will see the rhizomes clearly. Keep the young, firm, healthy rhizomes from the outer edge, each with a fan of leaves attached, and throw away the old, woody, or damaged centerpieces. Trim the leaf fans back to about 6 inches, because the plant cannot support tall leaves while it is rebuilding roots, and shorter fans also stop the wind rocking the new division loose. Now the one thing that matters most, and it is where people go wrong. Do not bury the rhizome. A bearded iris rhizome wants to sit right at the surface, with its top actually visible, just breaking the soil, and only the roots underneath in the ground. Plant it too deep, cover that rhizome with soil, and it will not flower, and it may rot. The instinct to tuck it safely under the soil like a normal plant is exactly the mistake. It needs to bask at the surface, almost sitting on top of the ground. Get that right. Replant the divisions in a sunny, well-drained spot, and they will reward you with a full display next May. Now, the second one, the hardest working plant in most gardens, the daylily. Number 2. Daylilies. The hardest working plant in most gardens, and one of the easiest and most forgiving things you will ever divide, which makes it the perfect one to start on if you have never done this before. Daylilies are tough, adaptable, and they multiply fast, growing from dense clumps of fleshy roots into ever larger mounds. That vigor is exactly why they need dividing every 3 to 5 years, because a clump that gets too big turns on itself. You will see the signs clearly. Plenty of green foliage, but far fewer flower stalks than the plant used to produce, and often a hollow, bare center where the middle of the clump has worn out. That combination, lush leaves and dwindling flowers, is the plant telling you it is overcrowded and starving itself. Late summer is a good time to divide them for a practical reason. By now, most daylilies have finished their main flush of bloom, so lifting them does not interrupt the show, and there are still enough warm weeks for the divisions to root before winter. If yours is a reblooming type, still throwing the odd flower, do not wait for the very last one. Just go ahead once the main display is clearly over. The plant is forgiving, but the roots are dense and tough, so lifting a big clump often takes real effort, sometimes 2 garden forks pushed in back to back and levered apart. Once it is out, you separate it into sections, and each division wants at least 3 or so fans of foliage with roots attached, because a bigger division establishes faster and flowers sooner. You can split them smaller if you want lots of new plants, but the tiny pieces may skip a year before they bloom. Cut the foliage back to about 5 or 6 inches to take the strain off the roots while they re-establish. Replant at the same depth the clump was growing before. Water them in well, and that is genuinely all there is to it. Daylilies bounce back so reliably that you can expect a good show from the divisions the very next season. Now, a quick word, because this whole job is about the health of your whole garden, and that is worth a moment. Quick one, right here, because dividing is really about the long-term health of your whole garden, keeping your best plants vigorous and flowering for decades instead of letting them slowly wear out. And the plants people most want to keep thriving, the ones they ask me about most, are usually the flowering shrubs that anchor the beds these perennials grow around. So I did the honest, in-depth version for the ones people struggle with most, and put them together. It is called The Complete Library, 3 guides in 1. The Hydrangea Mastery Guide, because a hydrangea is 6 different plants wearing one name, each pruned at a different time. The Complete Lavender Guide, because lavender is killed far more often by the wrong care than by the cold. And the Hydrogen Peroxide Playbook, 31 sourced garden uses for the one bottle already under your sink. Each one does for a single plant what this video does for these perennials: when to cut it, when to move it, when to leave it alone, and the honest limits nobody selling you a miracle will admit. All three together are $57, which is $24 less than buying them separately. No inflated discount, just the real math. Instant PDFs, a 7-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the description at waltgreer.com. And they end the way this channel always does, with the truth included. 4 of the 6 hydrangea types cannot change color no matter what you do. Lavender is not immortal and cannot be saved once it goes woody to the base. A guide that only tells you what to do is only half a guide. Now, back to the perennials. And the third one is the most famous of all to divide, and the one with the trap I warned you about, the peony. Number 3. The peony. The most famous perennial to divide, and the one carrying the trap I warned you about at the start. The mistake that gives you healthy leaves and no flowers for years. First, an honest word that sets the peony apart from everything else on this list. Peonies rarely need dividing at all. They are extraordinarily long-lived, happily flowering in the same spot for decades, even a lifetime, completely undisturbed. So unlike the iris and the daylily, which want regular division to stay vigorous, a peony is not asking to be divided as routine maintenance. You divide a peony only when you have a real reason, when you need to move it, or when you genuinely want to make more plants from a treasured one. If your peony is happy where it is, the honest advice is to leave it completely alone. When you do have a reason, late summer into early autumn is the correct window, because the plant has finished its season, and the roots can settle before the ground freezes. And this is a plant you handle with care, because peonies resent disturbance, and can sulk for a year or two after being moved, even when you do everything right. Now the trap, and this is the single most important thing in this entire video, because it explains a mystery that frustrates countless gardeners. When you replant a peony division, the depth you set it at determines whether it will ever flower again. Peonies grow from tuberous roots with visible pink or reddish growth buds on them, called eyes. Those eyes must be planted no more than an inch or two below the soil surface. Shallow. If you plant them deeper than that, tucking the roots down where they feel safe, the peony will grow perfectly healthy leaves and produce no flowers at all for years. Sit with what that means, because it is the answer to one of the most common questions in gardening. If you have a peony that makes lush foliage every year but has not bloomed in ages, and you have been blaming its age, the real problem is almost certainly that it is planted too deep. It was buried, at some point, an inch or two too far down, and it has been sulking ever since. The fix is to lift it and replant it with the eyes just barely under the surface. So, with a peony, plant shallow, or you get leaves and disappointment. Now, the fourth, and it is the one that surprises people, because you divide it when it looks dead, the oriental poppy. Number 4. The oriental poppy. This one surprises people, because the right time to divide it is exactly when it looks completely dead. Oriental poppies do something unusual among perennials. After they finish their spectacular early summer flowering, the whole plant dies back and disappears. The foliage yellows, collapses, and vanishes, and the plant goes fully dormant through the heat of high summer, leaving a bare patch of soil where a big leafy clump used to be. To anyone who does not know the plant, it looks like it has died. It has not. It is resting underground, and that dormancy is precisely the moment to divide it. That is the whole logic here. With most plants, you divide when they are actively growing but not flowering. The poppy flips that because its natural rest period falls in late summer. So dividing it then disturbs a plant that is already shut down for the season rather than one in active growth. Lifting a dormant poppy is far gentler than lifting one in full leaf. There is a genuine catch though, and it changes how you handle this one. Oriental poppies grow from long, deep, fleshy taproots, and they do not like being disturbed. So this is not a plant you chop into lots of little pieces. You lift it carefully, trying to keep those thick roots as intact as you can, and you divide it into just a few large, substantial sections. each with a piece of the crown and a healthy growing shoot or bud. Big divisions, handled gently, not a clump shredded into many small ones. One very practical tip, because it will save you a lot of frustration. Before the foliage completely disappears, mark exactly where the plant is. Push in a stake or a label. Once a poppy has gone fully dormant, the spot is bare soil and genuinely impossible to find, and you will either dig blindly and slice through the roots, or lose the plant entirely under something else. Mark it while you can still see it. Replant the divisions promptly at the same depth they were before. In a sunny, well-drained spot, water them in, and they will send up fresh foliage in autumn or the following spring and flower again. Now, the fifth, the anchor of every shady garden, and the shared method that ties all of these together, the hosta. Number 5. The hosta. The anchor of every shady garden, and a good one to end on, because dividing it brings together the method that ties all of these together. Hostas grow from a crown that widens into ever bigger clumps over the years, and while they do not demand dividing the way iris and daylilies do, they reward it. Refreshing a hosta every 4 or 5 years keeps it vigorous and lush, and it is the easiest way to turn one prized hosta into several. The signs are the same as the others: a clump that has grown too large for its spot, or one starting to thin or die out in the middle. And of course, dividing is how you multiply an expensive variety you love into a whole drift of them for free. Late summer works. With one timing note specific to hostas, they want a little longer to settle than some, so aim to get them divided around 4 weeks before your first frost at the latest, giving the divisions time to root before the cold. And there is a real bonus to dividing now rather than in spring. The plant is fully leafed out, so you can see exactly what you are working with as you split it. The method for a hosta is the shared method that works for most of these plants, so let me walk it through once as the general pattern. Lift the whole clump with a spade, taking as much of the root system as you can. For a big hosta that is a heavy job, so do not be shy about using a fork or spade to cut a large clump into pieces, then split it into sections, each with a fair share of roots and a few growing points. The eyes, the buds that become next year's leaves. Around 3 eyes per division is a good target for a piece that establishes well. Rinsing the soil off the roots first makes it much easier to see where to cut, which is a genuinely useful trick with a dense hosta crown. And the one thing to get right on replanting, which echoes the iris and the peony: do not bury the crown. Set the hosta back at the same depth it was growing, with the crown at the surface, because burying it more than an inch invites rot. Space the divisions to their mature size, water them in well, and they establish quietly for a bigger, better display next year. Now, the honest other side. The plants you must not divide right now. Now, the honest other side, because dividing the wrong plant right now is its own mistake, and it trades a thriving perennial for a struggling one. Late summer is not the season for everything. The clearest rule is about when a plant flowers. Late summer division suits perennials that bloom in spring and early summer, because they have finished their show and can spend the autumn rebuilding roots. The spring bloomers you must not divide now are the early ones. Bleeding heart is the classic example, along with lungwort and other very early risers. These want to be divided in spring, right after they flower, not now. Split them in late summer, and you disturb them at the wrong point in their cycle and set them back badly. There is also the flip side of the calendar. The perennials that bloom in late summer and autumn, things like many asters and fall-flowering plants, should generally be divided in spring, not now, because dividing them in late summer means cutting them apart just as they are trying to flower, and you lose the display and stress the plant at its peak. The simple principle underneath both: divide spring and early summer bloomers in late summer, and divide late summer and autumn bloomers in spring. You work on a plant when it is not busy flowering, and then the rule that overrides the calendar entirely, which is the weather. A date on the calendar saying August means nothing if your garden is in the middle of a heat wave. A freshly divided plant has lost much of its root system and cannot take up water well, so putting it through 90-degree heat and dry soil right after division is genuinely hard on it. If the soil is dry several inches down and the temperatures are punishing, the honest move is to keep the shovel in the shed and wait for the heat to break, even if that pushes you into early autumn. Cool, overcast, and damp is what you want, so a mild spell or light rain in the forecast is your signal to go. So read the plant and read the weather, not just the calendar. Let me pull the whole thing together. Before we finish, send this to one person you know, with a tired, overcrowded clump of something that used to flower better. Just the link. There is a very good chance one afternoon this month turns that plant back into the showpiece it was, and gives them a few free plants on top. Here is the whole thing in one idea. Dividing is the rare garden job that fixes and multiplies at the same time. You take a tired, overcrowded, poorly flowering plant, you split it, and you get back both a rejuvenated plant and several new ones for free. And for these 5, the window to do it is closing, because they need warm weeks left to root before the ground freezes. So divide your bearded iris, keeping the firm young rhizomes and setting them right at the surface, never buried, or they will not flower. Divide your daylilies once the blooms are done, the easy, forgiving place to start, whenever you see that bare center and dwindling flowers. Divide your peonies only if you truly need to, and if you do, plant the eyes barely an inch or 2 deep, because too deep is the reason so many peonies give leaves and no flowers for years. Divide your oriental poppies while they are dormant and look dead in late summer, gently, into big pieces, and mark where they are before they vanish. And divide your hostas to refresh them and multiply them, crown at the surface, the same as the iris. Get the timing from your own first frost, not the calendar, counting back about 8 weeks. Leave the spring bloomers like bleeding heart for spring. And if your garden is baking in a heat wave, keep the shovel in the shed and wait for it to break. Do this now, in this closing window. And next year those 5 come back vigorous and covered in flowers. And you have a stack of free plants to show for one afternoon, while the gardener who missed the window watches the same tired clumps flower less and less. Subscribe and hit the bell and stick around. We do this the honest way here in the Forgotten Knowledge Library, which means telling you which plants to divide and which to leave alone, and the one depth mistake that costs people years of flowers. It is free, and it always will be. And drop a comment telling me which of these 5 you are going to divide first, and whether you have ever lost flowers to planting something too deep, because I suspect the peony just solved a mystery for a few of you. Next time, another job with a closing window that decides how next year looks. I will see you in the next one.